Hello, happy Tuesday to everyone. Welcome to another Talk Advocacy to Me episode where we take one question from the customer marketing and advocacy field, bring in an expert and attempt to answer that question to the best of our ability and give some great information to all of you practitioners out there today. I'm Liz Richardson. I am the host of Talk Advocacy to Me. I have another team member here, Bianca del Vecchio, who will be co-hosting with me, and our very lovely long-term acquaintance guest, Evan Jacobs. There's a lot to say about Evan, and if you've been in this field at all for a while, you have heard Evan's name. He's worked at a multitude of different software SaaS companies, where he has run customer marketing and advocacy, and he is currently the head of customer marketing and partner marketing at Chainalysis, and he'll be sharing some of his goodness from his work there and past roles with us today. He's also highly decorated, maybe as decorated as you can get in the very immature field of customer marketing. So let's start with, of course, the newest win, which is Evan is a 2023 CAP Award Advocacy Mindset winner, a very coveted award. You were up against some pretty stiff competition, Evan, and you came out on top. How did that make you feel?
I mean, it felt great. It was humbling is the word. I mean, I know the other folks there, and I know what they've done and what they've brought to the field, to the program, to the whole ecosystem. So it was just cool to be part of that group, and just impressed by the applicants as well.
I was so happy with the top 3 picks because you guys had all given so much to this field. You were also last year a top 100 influencer and strategist in customer marketing and advocacy. Actually, that was this year, and last year were the top 25 influencers. So you've got a lot of, if we were to put badges on you, Evan, you'd be a bit decorated there. But we're so excited to get to talk to you today. And of course, our topic today is how can you make internal buy-in and collaboration your powerhouse when it comes to customer advocacy and engagement. And this is a topic I think that's very near and dear to you, especially right now. You have a lot of experience growing programs from the bottom up. And so there's so much you can share with our audience today on how to start from day one with building that internal collaboration. So let's just kick it off. You and I chatted the other day, and you had this really good story and analogy about customer marketing role. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Thanks, Liz. Yeah, so it was funny because I was for a different presentation for a different purpose. I decided to Google around the world's most lonely / dangerous job, right? And I quickly stumbled upon something that I didn't know much about, but it really hit home. So it was the concept of being a fire watcher. So there was a guy that wrote a book about, he did it for 8 years. He was a former Wall Street Journal editor, and he took on this job, seasonal job, 7-8 months a year. You're basically in the desert in New Mexico. You're alone, and basically your job is to be a fire watcher, which means you go on top of this 55-foot tower. It's all open all around, and your job is to look into the distance, these high-powered binoculars, and look around and see if you see any wisps of smoke. So you can't put the fire out because you don't have the tools, you're all alone, but you basically just call it in on this radio to whoever on the team that can send a helicopter or somehow attempt to put that out. So and it had all the elements. You're alone. You don't have a lot of resources, but what really stuck with me was that, as a customer marketer, I never want to be, any of us here never want to be, maybe some of us have been at one moment or not another, been this gentleman, Philip Connors, who was in this role as a fire watcher, because the analogy was, for me, was you never want to be up there because, okay, you've got, in a sense, you're high up, you've got good visibility, but you're looking through binoculars, so you're sort of, only you can see what's through there, and you're missing everything else the other direction. And by the time you kind of climb down from that tower, it's too late, you've missed it, you can't take action, you're sort of just observing, right? So and I think that really resonated for me when I was thinking about customer marketing, because like you don't want to be in that tower. Like, don't be Philip Connors. Like, get down from that tower, get down with your teams, your cross-functional teams, your own team even, and really just be in the mix, be there, and you have to live it. And I think for me that really stuck home, and that analogy happened to be convenient, but it sort of, I believe it to be true, and I believe it to be necessary for a customer marketer today to really have the biggest impact for their team, for the program, for the business, for the customer. So it's just really stuck with me.
Yeah, I think it's a great analogy. I think it's pretty apt, Evan, because I think from the origin of customer advocacy as a function, it does tend to look at things a little bit binocular, and even the function itself can become pretty siloed. And we are seeing a little bit more desire and emphasis to start seeing more holistically where advocacy fits in across the entire customer journey. And you can't do that if you're only looking at one thing at a time, or if you're not down in the mix right there on the ground floor.
Yeah, and I think by nature too, a lot of people, we find ourselves in these roles. We want to help. We want to be able to go, and we see that fire and we say, hey, we know how to address that. We can bring in a customer, or we can do something there. And I think being able to actually go and do something about that fire, so to speak, is something a lot of us feel really strongly about, wanting to help.
Exactly. Agreed.
Yeah. All right. So like, okay, that's a good point, Bianca, right? We want to go help. So, but is the function of advocacy and customer marketing more broadly, is it well positioned to be someone to look across the entire journey? And Evan, you're smiling, so I think you have something to say.
It's funny because I think by nature it is, and it should be, right? Because you think of, and I know some massive companies maybe have sort of regional functions or more vertical functions for advocacy and customer marketing. But on the whole, my experience with mid-size SaaS startups is that the role by its nature is designed to be global, right? It's not unique to a product line or unique to APAC or EMEA. It's a function that by its design can and needs to cut across all those sort of traditional lines and explore what works best for each region, take learnings from each and pass them along, even across. If you tried something for private sector, can it work for public sector, and vice versa? So really just having those blends there, not being sort of restricted or bounded or gated by some organizational structure. So I think yes, and I think it's also a bit of an open playing field, because typically, unless you're inheriting a program, if you're coming to build a program, no one has said like, this is how you must operate, this is your playbook. So you could really build out your playbook, and I mean, for me, that's so much of the learning and the fun as well. Like, I'm sure there's can be a ton of satisfaction from inheriting and up leveling and ramping up program. But for me, it's that playbook that no one tells you like it must be like this way. Like you can make your program and your team and the function fit to that. So I think, yeah, Liz, answering your question, I think yes, I think it is well suited for that cross-functional nature.
And I think if we think about, let's say, traditional, meaning like the last 5 to 10 years, traditional advocacy programming, it has an interesting function. It's very similar to community, right? Where you maybe as a customer are coming in at any part of your journey. Like right now, it's not so methodical in the way that it's structured, that you only interact with advocates or customers at specific points in time. Hopefully there is some rigor being built around that, but you do get kind of a comprehensive view of the customer because you're getting them at all points of their journey. You're not just getting them at onboarding or sale or even renewal, right? That tends to be advocacy programs. You get to interact with customers at all stages. And it's almost like you have to have some kind of ability to bring value to customers across the entire journey as part of your advocacy programming. So that means, in essence, yeah, you have to be able to work with all the departments, I think, in order to attain that value internally and bring it to the customer to improve that customer experience. So there can be a lot of pressure maybe when it comes to customer advocacy to help improve the customer experience across the entire journey. And for me, that's where things get a little fuzzy. Like, is advocacy the customer experience? Is it advocacy? Is it marketing? There's a lot of good, healthy debate to happen there.
Well, and the build on that, Liz, I agree with what you said, but even more, not only across the journey, but also up and down within a singular customer account, right? It can be your user, the different personas, all the way up through executive buyer, right? So you have the opportunity and chance to build programming for each of those, and it could look quite different depending on if it's chief compliance officer, chief information security officer, down to an analyst or someone who's using it, your product on a regular basis. So I think just one more layer on top of what you were just laying out.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in the past. So there can be quite a bit of complexity as an advocacy professional in your skill set, because like what you just said, Evan, you have to learn how to bring value and personalization to customers at all these different levels, different parts of the journey, different roles. And then we haven't even started to talk about the internal collaboration piece and the skill sets needed to build internal collaboration. And I always think of that advocacy manager, you have to build that internal buy-in. So you also have to treat your internal teams like your customers and deliver the same type of value, the same type of personalization. And when we say that, it's like, whoa, who's up for that?
Right.
Evan's pausing. He's like, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, a lot of people, right? Because I think it does provide that freedom in a way, right? Like it's not like you're this segment. I think it allows you to develop some of those skills as well. Like you may have expertise in one of those, but I think I find it a rare and unique opportunity to, wow, like you have a reason and an excuse and a hook to a C-level at your customer, whereas in many roles what excuse would you have? You'd have no reason, other than maybe here and there. But so I think I find that as a big opportunity, a challenge also, but an opportunity to have a reason to go up and also help. And maybe we'll get to that when we talk to the cross-functional piece, but is help your teams have a reason to go up, right? Kind of maybe breaking out of who they're talking to or working with on a daily basis. So I see that as a big plus, actually.
How do you navigate that, Evan, in terms of, having those different conversations and switching context between, internal leaders and leaders at your customer accounts? You said it's a challenge, and it definitely is. It can be an exciting one, but would love to hear how you approach that or how you coach your teams to do that.
I mean, it comes down to priorities, right? Like you may not be able to do everything for all at the same time, but it's like, and I think that goes to that cross-functional. It's like getting your head behind what are their OKRs, right? Like you might be trying to do these user groups in this region for this, and that might be great and good to do, but not the most important thing, right? And I think in this environment, like everyone wants to do tying to those key initiatives, right? Like what are those key things? And that will be different for each team. And I think that's one of the things that I found from a cross-functional is like, especially you're coming into an org, you don't know what matters, and you can't and don't want to make people do what you think is important. I think I've probably been tripped up by that, and maybe some others over time too, is that you're like, you think you have this great program and you're like, here it is, people. And they're like, well, that internally, like, that has nothing to do with what my cares about. Right. So I think it's rather than polishing up this perfect thing and say, here it is. And I think the first piece I would say to answer that, Bianca, your question is to really go on that listening tour and really being just like absorbing everything, right? Whether that's, of course, one-on-ones and calls, but even things you can't get on live, you can listen to recordings, you can hop on Gong. There's just a lot of ways to sort of take that in, find out from those various leaders. If you're talking to like some regional sales leaders or area vice presidents for sales, like understanding like what is their team focused on? Is it the quarterly goals, annual goals? Like what are they trying to do? And figure out like how you can attach to those in some way. You're not going to be a silver bullet, right? You're talking about like you can attach to those things they care about. I would say that's one of the most important things I've found is that you can do that because you don't have to invent it, right? They will tell you what's most important to them, right? Like you don't also I think the other thing I would say is the how is also don't be constrained necessarily by what you think customer marketing should do, right? I'm not saying we have total scope creep here and just like do a 50 million things running around, but it's like the remit can be pretty broad, right? So it's like, and customer marketing can have those resources with expertise or access or whatever it is to help out in those ways beyond what you either have done or told your sort of your remit is supposed to be. So I'd say keep it, be flexible and see what you can fold in under there, of course, without overcommitting. But I think it's very much around, like I said, and also I would say the one piece which we'll talk about now or later, I would say is don't feel you have to do it alone. My learnings over time have been you can fail doing it alone, but if you have someone who's willing to co-pilot that with you from your stakeholders, it's going to be likely to be more effective. It's going to be more fun. It's going to be more impactful. There's going to be more hooks, and you're going to get more visibility to ultimately what you're trying to do. So I think sometimes myself and maybe folks in this role too, like, oh, everyone like want to be the hero. You just sort of like say yes to a million things and then just sort of like put it on your shoulders, which is admirable, but also like really hard to pull off because you're going to need not just buy-in from these teams. You want them to be doing it with you, ideally. Maybe you can't, pull it off.
No, I think that's a really important point, Evan. It's, there's so many parallels that I'm hearing right now to the external facing customer advocacy role and the internal facing customer advocacy role. And externally, we have come to accept things such as, okay, there is no one size fits all program that's going to bring value to our entire customer base. So we've matured to some degree, and we know we need to personalize and bring variety to those programs so that they can have the valuable outcomes for that customer base. Internally, we sometimes don't approach it with the same rigor or idea of thinking of, okay, not every program is going to bring every internal department value. I really need to think about what my internal teams are saying that they need, where their blockers are, where their pain points are, where they need or could use that nurture and activation help that we are so skilled at bringing. And then I need to figure out the types of programs as well and the ways of engaging customers that are going to help them get the value they need as well. So you're really that middle person, right? And then, Evan, you had a really good point the other day when we were talking about, we talk a lot about getting that internal buy-in. And I'd say, truth be told, a lot of that is focused around getting leadership buy-in. And there's maybe not a lot of emphasis on, well, who else's buy-in do we really need to get? Tell us about that.
Yeah, and I think, talking about that listening tour, you're right. So it's like the most common and probably, commonly done way. You start with the leaders. You start at the top and you start there, and then you may think you're done. And I think that is a starting point, and I wouldn't skip that by any means. But I think in parallel, what I've found, especially these days, is that there's as much emphasis needed on that individual contributor, whether that's an account executive, a CSM, a solutions architect, whoever it may be, to really have them not just do something because their manager, their leader asked them to, but because they think it's actually, they believe it, they agree with it, and they think it's the right thing for their book of business, right? They believe it, and that way, when you do roll something out or sort of have that call in leadership is saying, hey, call to action, hey everyone, help out on this or be ready. It's already seeded for them. They already know what it's about, and they're doing it because they think it will help them personally or help their customer, help what they're trying to accomplish. And I think it's easy enough to miss, especially also because we're all about scale and efficiency. Like, hey, if I can go to a leader that can help cover 40 people, whereas having to have 40 individual conversations. So I'd say my theory is I think you need both. I think you need both now more than ever, because there's so much that can be sort of thrown over that wall to the to your account teams, to your account pods. It's like, But you have to look at it through their mind. Like, things are getting tossed over to them and they're just expected to do these 50 things. But if they're expecting them and they know what they are and they buy into them, you're going to get way better adoption when you actually do. Hey, remember that thing we talked about? Like, it's time to put that into action. So I think top down is a must, but bottom up, it's critical. And I wouldn't skip it, even if it costs you more time up front, more one-on-one calls. But yeah, that's what I've observed in over a couple roles, that's a must-have, and I would suggest for those that have the time and capacity to do that to have those calls. You're going to need those relationships anyway, and why not start early?
Yeah, absolutely. Evan, gosh, man, time goes so fast. I want to make sure we get into some, real life exampling here. Obviously, you've been at several software companies and you've done this multiple times. But I would love to talk a little bit about your role at Chainalysis now, just a quick overview of that, and then getting into an example of how you've really tried to build inroads and collaboration with internal teams to make sure that you're bringing that two-way value, both, I'm going to call them, both to your external customer advocates and building internal advocates as well.
Sure. Yeah. So the role does cover, as we talked about at the beginning, it's global in scope. It does work with our teams across products and regions and across our two sectors, both public sector and private sector. So both are important parts of our business, and both require different approaches, right? Things that we're talking about earlier, hey, like Yeti mugs or this or that can work great in the private sector, but public sector, you can't give out anything more than $10 or, like something super nominal, right? So so I think it just requires so much learning. For me, I had some exposure to public sector in previous roles, but here it's critical. So just being constantly open to learning, and our internal experts are always there to guide and give their expertise. So one of the things that I noticed in sticking about public sector is that because of who they are, the roles that they have is, serving the public, they often, not always, but often can't participate in those traditional, if you will, customer marketing, customer advocacy activities. When you think of a case study or testimonial or stuff like that, they just aren't allowed to do, and it's just not something that they could do even if they wanted to, just because of their mission and how they're set up. So one thing that I had wanted to try for a while was the concept of nominating our customers, specifically in the public sector, for awards, for industry awards, that already existed, awards that were considered very reputable, and also something that would look good ultimately for a customer organization, for a customer team, customer person to attach to. And it was not so much about, hey, whether they get the win or whether they don't win the award, because of course that's not up to us. Of course we can work on a great nomination, but any award that you care about is going to be, lots of nomination, lots of submissions, but much more about deepening that relationship. And it's like recognizing customers for work that they're doing above and beyond, especially some of these organizations in the public sector. It's amazing what they're doing, keeping people safe, keeping the amazing work they're doing. And so I really wanted to try one and saying, can we identify, and I should say this is working hand in hand with our leadership and in certain regions, saying, let's identify a handful together and let's target and say, okay, once we've come up with this list, let's see, okay, what are the deadlines? And then matching up who within our customer base has, exemplified, wow, that characteristic or that category. And then really, then getting the customer excited about that too, because they need approvals, and right, they still need approvals. So really just doing that as a team, as a combined team, again, not being on top of that tower, not trying to be a hero and find it. You're going to need to work with your account team, your CSM anyway. So bring them in early, make this concept part of how they work, right? And it's immediately, and you've probably heard me say this all the time, it moves in instantly from favor zone to opportunity, right? For the customer, for the account, for the business, for everyone. So it's like overcoming that. It's like, let's explore, let's see which ones we've got, and we had some great successes doing that recently. We've done that recently in EMEA, in a couple of public sector accounts there, and it's given fire to people, like, wow, like this went from theory to practice, right? It's like, oh, it's not just, oh, there's a spreadsheet and we'll just, like, let's try this out. Let's do this with quality. Let's engage all the right teams. We're going to need at the end legal and comms and the account teams, and just putting it through that process. And we know we can do it now, right? It gives that boost of that confidence that this is that classic, like, win all around, right? Like, you can do all the right things, and if it comes to a great outcome, it's always a great outcome here, right? It's like, even if your customer, let's say, doesn't get that finalist categorization, it's okay, because you thought of them, right? Like, you thought of them, you selected them, and I think it goes to further that relationship. It goes to the core of how we work with our customers, and how we strive to build them up, yes, in their day-to-day, the program they're trying to execute, but also for their own careers, for their own, for what they're trying to do as professionals. So it really meets those criteria for all the reasons, and it, for me, was a great way to get onto the radars of teams that are so busy internally, right? They've got a lot of different things, and just, not that this is unheard of, this concept, but just let's try it, and showing people, right, and building that trust internally, that this is, like, not just going to be neutral to the customer or any negative at all, but, like, it's going to be positive. It's going to be net positive to that relationship, and just showing you're all operating from the same song sheet, right? Everyone's just trying to, and our goals and their goals and the customer, they're all aligned, right? And I think that, and that can take some doing, getting to that, right? So I'm not saying don't do this on the first day, but, like, I think people can get there, right? And that we did it, others can do it if they haven't already. So just as an anecdote, Liz, of, like, that, how cross-functional, getting all those teams involved.
And it gives you an opportunity, Evan, to celebrate that customer. If they are selected as a winner of that award, to celebrate them without necessarily going down that traditional path of doing a case study. You can still promote that and amplify it and get their name out there.
Exactly, right. So it still does tap into some of those things that we've all grown up with, right? Bianca, I'm with you. Agreed.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it feels good to know that you're doing it in the right way. Like, public sector can do it in a certain way. You're not trying to push a rock up the hill and making them do a case study when you know they can't, right? So it just makes us flex what we know, what we've grown up with, and do it in a slightly different way for different need, and just be open to that.
Yeah, and the time invested there, right? Just like you said, building that relationship, even if they don't win and you don't get that opportunity, right? It's not a given. You're still investing all of that time, and you're building that relationship with them, and that goes a really long way.
Yeah, and you never know, it might open up other opportunities. They can speak at a conference, they can do other things, so it gets each other on the radar.
I think that's, like, a huge point, Evan, because honestly, I think what's interesting about this story, and I really like this example, because it does take, specifically with this example in public sector, a lot of people involved. Their legal team has to be involved. Your legal team has to be involved. PR has to be involved. The account team has to be involved. Whoever is sending people to this event to see if they get their work. There's just a lot of people involved. And of course, you're involved. And I think it's a great example of answering that question. How do you use cross-functional collaboration as your powerhouse? You were able to bring all these people together around a single initiative because you found the equal weight of value between all the groups involved. You're checking boxes for the PR and legal team. You're checking boxes for the account team. And you're most importantly checking boxes for the customer themselves. And that sense of, I'm getting so much value out of this collaboration. So advocacy becomes not, hey, will you do this for me? And then I'll do this for you. It really became more of a, let's do this together. But it took a village, so to say. Like, you had to have everybody involved in order to create that level of synchronous value.
Yeah, and it and fun too, and to show we can do it, right, as a team. I think that's getting that confidence as a shared group. Like, we can try something, experiment. I think being open to that, right? Like, willing to. There's no fail here in that sense, right? There's no
No,
fail.
it's fun to win as a team, right? You all have a role to play in that, even with your customers. So that's always the best outcome.
Yeah, we'll feel good on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like what you said, Evan. Real quick, you almost could have just missed it, person on the call listening. But Evan said something about kind of not needing to be up on the hill or the mountain, not needing to be the main person being seen, or the main relationship holder in here, right? You work with that account owner and you let everyone share the win and the spotlight of that work with the customer and the big win with the customer. And I think that's like, you're really onto something there, with finding where you can elevate people internally to get that internal buy-in. We're always elevating our customers, but are we looking at our internal teams and thinking, how can I elevate this person so I can get some buy-in? Not just, OKRs are great, that's good with their boss, but are you giving them the spotlight as part of your work as an advocacy professional? That's an interesting thought to me. I'm not sure we always think so clearly internally as we think externally, because of course our main mandate is usually to tell our customer story, but are we telling joint story of the people on our team as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we're at time, and obviously we could talk about this forever. But Evan, I just want to stop and say, okay, if you were to, someone's just starting out, and I know you said, listen, but they're just starting out, and, they're listening to this and they think, man, I have not done a good job building internal collaboration and advocacy. What would you leave them with?
So I think it's, if you haven't done that job yet, I think it's being humble, right? It's maybe being willing to just start from scratch. Like, I think it's just, you have to walk a mile in their shoes, right? You have to understand what their day is like. And it's because sometimes, like, you might come and say, hey, I have this great program again. And it's like, wrong time, wrong place, wrong approach. And like, just meet people where they are. And I think maybe it's so much of a cliche, but like, get some small wins, and they may be small, and make a little noise about them appropriately, not too much for something small, but like get some wins, and really build from there, right? I think you want to show what the capability is, get people excited about that shiny future, and get there together. You got to build your internal that trust, and don't try to do it all in a day. Start with things, like someone might really care about reviews. Okay, well, like, get them, get the ball rolling there, show what you can do with them, show how you can activate those. Like, certain areas, like, you'll get to know where a small amount of effort can actually be perceived in a bigger way. So yeah, get some of those wins rolling, and then build from there. Be humble, try different things, and just meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. I love that. Thank you so much, Evan, for your time, your experience, sharing that with everyone. And Bianca, thank you for being my lovely co-host today. Everyone who is listening, enjoyed having you. And Evan is a wonderful person. If you're not already connected to Evan, I'm sure he would accept your LinkedIn request. Friendly guy. He stayed humble despite all the awards. Evan has stayed humble. So definitely reach out to him. He has a lot of wisdom to share. That's it for today, and we will see everyone on our next Talk Advocacy to Me episode. Bye-bye.